Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny. Sometimes Colorado. Today is a good day. It's August 13th, 2021. If you guys watch me on Rand's show, Rand's an old friend of mine, or watched our announcement we made to the IOHK systems, we are marching towards the Hard Fork Combinator event to bring the Alonzo era here, thus completing the initial scope of work for Goguen. Metadata, native assets, and then finally smart contract functionality. And that is going to occur September 12th. Hard Fork event for the testnet for the mainnet candidate will be September 1st. Over 140 exchanges to upgrade. Mainnet candidate's going to be cut August 16th. That's a Monday. Now, many of you are recognizing that the HFC event is occurring on a Sunday. So we have to trigger the event a few days beforehand. So it's going to be triggered at the end of the week. And then it'll occur on the 12th, which is a Sunday. We're going to have a watching party. I shall be there. And we will kill all those spooky ghosts in this so-called ghost chain. How about that? It's been a long road to get here. Years and years and years of effort. I've really enjoyed it. It's been hard a lot, and the last 90 days in particular have been some of the busiest of my life. And we got through it because of you, the community. Each and every one of you fought hard for us, with us. Every day you showed up, you believed in us, and you said a lot of kind words when there were many who were not saying kind things. I think we've been called everything under the sun. A weird cult by a famous investor. Ghost chain, scam coin, shit coin, never deliver, academic project, just a wallet. But you know what? Here today, we showed the entire industry doesn't phase us at all. The dogs bark, but the caravan shall forever move on in one direction. That North Star is getting billions of people who don't have economic identity, their economic identity. I've always believed that if you want to change the world, you have to play a different game than the game the world is playing. So to win the game, you have to change it. And that's what we did. VCs don't take us seriously, so we created our own. And that's bigger and better than most of them. And it's run by you, not them. Governments didn't take us seriously. So we went to the ones that did, and now they do. And we're making amazing progress on digital transformation. Everybody said, why Haskell? Such a language you'll never find developers. Over 3,000 of you in the community showed up, and you decided to join the Plutus Pioneers program. This is just the beginning. Thousands will turn to tens of thousands, turn to hundreds of thousands, and we'll just keep building. Every step of the way, there were challenges that had to be overcome, and there's many more to come, because it's a new ecosystem. But we never gave up, and we never lost momentum. When someone comes into the Cardano family, they're here for life. They don't leave. And that's where our source of strength is from. Just look at the growth of Catalyst. Just look at the growth of all of our social channels. Just look at how many of you have been here for years. And those years will turn to decades. It's a movement. And why is it a movement? It's not a movement based upon an individual or a company or some collection of loose ideals. It's a movement that's much more fundamental and human. It's about liberty and freedom at its core. You see, the things that we build return power to the edges. They put you in charge of your own money. They put you in charge of your own identity. They make sure that you always have a say in how you economically participate with people. And as these systems start rolling into nation states, they'll inevitably be used for voting. They'll inevitably be used for national settlement and clearing. CBDCs of the future, at least one of them will be issued on Cardano at some point. And what does that effectively mean? It means that even the nation states are constrained by the same rules and principles as we are constrained by. We were born into a world of double standards. We were born into a world where certain people play a different game than us and get certain privileges we don't have. Now, in the olden days, this was very explicit. You'd have noble titles, king and baron and duke, emperor. Lord. And the rest of us are serfs, most of us. Today, we just hide it. We say we have democracies, but in many cases we don't, especially when the bureaucracies make decisions for the democracies. We say that everybody's equal, but we all kind of understand there are certain people that seem to be more equal than others in outcomes. And they always seem to win no matter what happens. Don't believe me? If a billionaire gets arrested for something that somebody in poor area of Chicago gets arrested for, do you honestly think they're going to have the same experience with the criminal justice system? If we had a completely fair, transparent, egalitarian system, they actually would. But we all know we don't. And because we don't, there is an endless quest for mankind to make it better. And we work together on that. The researchers invent new systems. The engineers build new systems. We implement, we deploy them. Unfortunately, this has been very asymmetrical. While it's been easy and straightforward for us to make great progress in the technology domain, every year we seem to get a new iPhone, we get a new iPad, we get our new Samsung Galaxy, we get our new version of Windows from time to time, and we see tremendous progress there. The social innovation, the social infrastructure, the governance innovation, the governance infrastructure, the monetary innovation, the monetary infrastructure, these things seem stuck in a molasses that takes decades to centuries and utterly uncaring to the mistakes they make and the people they hurt. This point of cryptocurrencies and broader blockchain technology is about remediating that great sin, that great indifference and blind spot to the suffering governance causes, and putting it on the same evolutionary path that the iPhone has, that technology has. And Cardano, in my view, is the most evolved of these projects because we explicitly confronted some of the hardest things to confront, from how do you have stable fees and native assets to how do you vote to how do you have sustainability with your consensus algorithm? How do you do programmability right? All of these things were first principles questions that do not require the answers of the past. Rather, they require models and science and careful thought and careful iteration and a tireless group of people who wake up every day saying, we can do better today and we can do better tomorrow. That principle of Kodawari and Ikigai, the relentless pursuit of perfection and a way of life pursuing that perfection. And this is a moment for us. September 12th is just a day, but for you, it's going to be also an opportunity and a moment to build things, to deploy things. In the beginning, it'll be a little tough because it always is. There's going to be some software that doesn't work because it always does. There's going to be a DApp that fails from time to time, and a lot of learning and lessons and optimizations and improvements and extensions and refinements that have to be made. After all, nothing is perfect, but things change quickly. Don't believe me? Look at the time period between when the Wright brothers first took to the sky in Carolina to the moon landing. These two events seem so far apart. Black and white pictures of a crudely constructed flying machine by a few hobbyists to a nation state having mankind stand in a life support suit on a different planetoid, a moon. Amazing accomplishment. Only 66 years. 66 years. For most of human history, seldom would things change in a century. Things would maintain relatively the same lifestyle. If you were born in 700 BC and someone was born in 600 BC, there'd be comparability there. You'd have relatively the same lifestyle, relatively the same expectations. Now, every now and then there's exceptions. But here, 66 years from a crude flying machine to standing on the surface of the moon is an amazing thing. And it's speeding up. That means when we launch this, just like all the other great launches that are coming in our space, we're all evolving the social fabric, the choice theory. We're all looking at the future and saying we can do better. And you're all part of that. It's a movement. Millions of people here, billions of people worldwide who need it. We're all one in that respect. So it was a really, really good day. I enjoyed making the announcement. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the conference is coming September 25th, 26th. It's going to be in 7 locations. The flagship will be in Wyoming. That's where I'll be at, but people will be all over the world, from Cape Town to Tokyo. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. Wanted to do an AMA just for you guys. And now I get to your questions. Have a cold beer tonight, Charles. I think I'm going to be drinking something stronger than a cold beer. Hey, Charles, how's life? Don't forget to take a break from time to time. How's it feel to be able to see the future? The easiest way of seeing the future is to create it. And that's what we're doing together. As for taking a break, I will take a 2-week vacation after the conference because I'm done. We've been working pretty hard and I've taken a break in a long time. Hey, Charles, I'd like to ask about the issue of concurrency. I saw Lars mentioning it, but it was never got to anything official with it. You could achieve concurrency. This is like some weird thing that's flowing around that apparently you can only do one thing with a smart contract. You can chain smart contracts together. Guys, multiple inputs, multiple smart contracts. Think about UTXO. But take the Plutus Pioneers program. They'll show you how to build things. Python on Cardano when? When someone builds a compiler for that. What's up with the lobster? Well, one of these days, you guys are going to name this lobster. I'm going to like the name so much, I'm just going to start calling him that, and he'll end up as an NFT. Let's see how long that takes. Will the military ever be on blockchain? Already is. This is something. The fraudsters are now saying the date of September 12th is wrong because it doesn't land on a Monday. You don't need to do an HFC on a Monday. That's when the epic turnover occurs. So that's when the HFC occurs. You trigger it before the weekend, guys. This is the thing. People don't even understand how our technology works, but then prognosticate about it and claim that things are impossible. There's just everybody's an expert, especially the people who haven't read and done anything. Hey, Charles, how is the situation with SingularityNet? They're a strong partner. We work with them, and they're building. We're building, and I can't wait to see what they release on Cardano. What fish do you prefer to eat? Love trout, love halibut. Can smart contracts be hacked? Yes. Anything that is written and built can be broken. Anything that's written and built can be hacked. So then the question is, what prevents that from occurring, or at least reduces the chance of it? And that's really the concept of certified software. So basically, the idea is that if you have a specification and a certain development methodology and tooling, what you can do, or an outside auditor can do, is prove the implementation follows that specification, and that specification can be well tested and well understood. Okay. And if you do that, your chance of a hack goes down exponentially. Still exists, still is possible, but there's a question of, does the platform work against you towards achieving that, or does it work with you towards achieving that? And the way we design Plutus and Cardano, we want the platform to work with you in your goal of achieving high assurance. And we'll discuss that a lot in the utility track of the Cardano Summit and show some of our partners off who've been doing some really amazing work to help you as a developer get certified software. Then there's a community responsibility here. And some of this can be done by us, the infrastructure providers, in visualization, where we can show you what's secure. We can show you what's been certified through colors and locks and visual artifacts. But you, the user, ultimately have to make the decision of, do you use a certain piece of software or not? And we see this a lot with giveaway scams. We see this a lot with impersonation websites for Daedalus and so forth. If you download the wrong software, if you fall for a giveaway scam, Cardano can be perfectly secure, but you're not utilizing that security because you're voluntarily harming yourself. So the single best thing you can do to prevent a hack is upgrade this. You have to be a smart user, and we'll try as hard as we can with educational materials and marketing. Every day I say we never will give away ADA. Yet every day I get emails from people saying, I sent you ADA, I didn't get any back. Why? And then I always reply the same way. I send them a copy of my video where I'm screaming at the top of my lungs again and again and again. We're not giving away ADA. We're not giving away ADA. This video, because YouTube is negligent, is going to be recut, and there's going to be a giveaway Chiron on it. Even though I'm saying we don't give away ADA, it's going to be recut, and there's going to be a giveaway scam, and at least one person will fall for it. YouTube is responsible for that. They know it's happening. They permit it to happen. They have the algorithms to stop it. They just don't care. And it's quite sad, but it is what it is. How does someone with a business degree get into crypto? Don Tapscott has some great courses on Coursera. He's got a whole program oriented towards people with business degrees and MBAs. I'd recommend taking those, and then you can talk about digital transformation, blockchain transformation within your organization. After you take those, you'll have a good time pitching it. Charles, what's the biggest misconception about billionaires? I think the biggest misconception is that you gain clarity of purpose and sight as a billionaire. I've taken this Flow Research Collective course, and one of the lectures is about finding your strengths. And the third exercise they give you to find your strengths, outside of the Buckingham test and the Lindley test, is this idea of the millionaire test. And they say, if you have unlimited money, what would you do? And it's supposed to be something to find your passions and your strengths, the things you're good at. And kind of in that situation, if you think about it, and yet I still do the same things I did when I wasn't. So I guess maybe I am living my life of passions, or maybe there's more to the story there. You don't get magically healthy or wise or capable when you cross an arbitrary threshold of something you possess. I think the other misconception is that billionaires are intrinsically greedy and feel no social responsibility. It's certainly true there exists some that are, but the vast majority of people that have a lot recognize that those who are given a lot, much is expected of. And this is why they start a lot of companies and charities and donate money and do a lot of things. There's a group of people that feel that no one should be a billionaire and they should be robbed of all of their wealth so that the government can decide what to do with it and where to allocate it. I'll give it to the war machine if you do that. So maybe that's a good idea if you live in a bizarre reality, but we have responsibilities. For example, I'm setting up a biotechnology company with my dad and brother. Recently got incorporated, and next year we're going to make a lot of progress on it. It'll be probably silent mode for 2 or 3 years. But one of the things the company is really focused on is anti-aging and regenerative medicine. Why? Because for 70 years, my family has been involved in medicine. My grandfather was a doctor. My dad was a doctor, still is. Get a little old, but he's still a doctor. He's an internist up in Wyoming. And my brother's a doctor. And throughout all of their careers, they always run into the same problem again and again and again. You treat things. You don't cure things. Got diabetes, got heart disease, got hypertension, got all these things. Take this pill and it'll slow down the decay, slow down the spread, but doesn't cure it. Doesn't say, hey, do X and in 2 weeks you get better, like a broken bone being mended or something like that. And there's too much of that in medicine. And nobody signs up to be a doctor, to be the maintainer in chief. No one signs up to say, well, I can't save you, so what I'm going to do is, instead of having you die at 60 miles an hour. I'll have you die at 30. No one wants that. They sign up to cure things. They sign up to fix things. They sign up to make you better, feel healthier, and live a great life throughout your entire life. Well, the magic of regenerative medicine and anti-aging is many of the things in that field are precisely along those lines of, can we cure it or at least promote wellness so that these types of degenerative conditions don't occur? So it's a big passion of mine. There is nothing the US government is going to do to coordinate product lines that end up being injected into your body. They sure, through BARDA and all these other organizations, dump lots of money into them, but they don't actually think a lot about what does it take to build a product, reliable product, iterative product. That's what capitalism is for. That is our system of governance. And if you have the right incentives and the right mindset and the right community, you can collectively get thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people to work on something directly and indirectly. And then over time, you can build product lines that actually accomplish great things. So it's my belief that in the coming decades, that's going to be one of the biggest areas of growth and most transformative industries. And it's going to result in people who have terrible conditions actually getting a lot better, and in many cases, no longer having those terrible conditions. Now, there's always a lot of skepticism in these things, but being a billionaire means that I can risk my own money and get it to a point where we feel comfortable and we don't have to make grand claims like Theranos or these other people and prognostications. Rather, we can just go in deep research for years if necessary, decades if necessary, and follow a crazy idea to see how far we can take it, as we've seen with SpaceX and Blue Origin and these other ventures, which are really transforming the way that humans get into the space industry, much more so than NASA would be, than I argue. So I think there's an enormous value to society, having people who have passions met with the resources to pursue those passions. For example, I'm a big fan of alternative energy. I have solar on my farm. And I said, boy, it'd be just amazing to have geothermal on my ranch. The problem is I have no natural geothermal resources on the ranch. We did a big geologic survey there, found some rubies, but not anything like that. So there's a company called Evor, EAVOR. I'm not sure how they're exactly pronounced, Evor, EAVOR, but they're based in Canada, and they actually figured out how to get geothermal to work everywhere. So we reached out to them this Monday, upcoming Monday. I'm going to have a call with them, and we'll talk about building a 3.5 megawatt plant and see what we can do. That'd be a lot of fun. And what's so cool about it is that they're a startup. And if we're successful here, then it's going to become permanently part of some of my plans I have with aquaponics. Many of you know I love hydroponics and aquaponics. I'm a big fan of growing mushrooms and herbs and all kinds of food. Food resiliency is a super important thing to me. And so I'd like in every small town, mid-sized town in America, have a big aquaponics facility. First, each and every one of them will create 20 to 40 jobs. And also it means that we're having local food production. So if another COVID hits, we won't have barren shelves again. Or if a big war breaks out, we won't have that. Okay. Well, wouldn't it be so cool to pair hydroponics technology with geothermal technology? We could put geothermal anywhere in the world. That means next to every aquaponics facility, I can do a geothermal closed loop facility. Carbon neutral, unlimited energy, runs forever. The Earth is an amazing battery. And if that works, it's just cost of doing business. It's part of the solution. Being a billionaire means I can try that out. I can go do that. I can think about that. I have the resources to pursue it and bring a coalition of people around it. And having capitalism means if I can find a way to make it economically sustainable, and many aquaponics facilities are 28% ROI at scale, that'll fall a bit, but it still will probably be above 10%. How many investments you got right now in bonds and stock markets and other places that get 10%? Not many. So it's an exotic asset. It's an exotic investment. And so having those connections and those networks and being able to utilize the capitalist system means I can find a sustainable model to build these types of things. And in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, me plus competition could achieve food resiliency. And we could do that in a completely carbon neutral way. These are just examples of things you can do when you have these types of resources. The philosophy of saying that no human should and only the government should is just bizarre. And every single time in human history where that's happened, you end up getting dictators and totalitarianism and kings, and basically they just rob from society, and it becomes a game of status quo preservation than innovation. We got a lot of problems we're going to have to solve in the 21st century if we wish to be a sustainable species. Some of these problems are problems of resources. Some of these problems are problems of unsustainable industries. Some of these problems are problems of a lack of wisdom and the growing wisdom gap of technology and existential problems. And each and every one of us has a personal responsibility to be part of those solutions. The point of blockchain is our industry democratizes those solutions. It brings down the barrier to entry to a point that the poorest people in the world can still be part of the solution, not charity. And the point of the other side is that now that we have these tools, the billionaire class of America and the world has a moral obligation to utilize these tools for the greater good of humanity as a whole. Much has been given to us, and thus much should be demanded of us to carry these things through. And I hope that the majority of those who live in the class feel that way. Thoughts on the turmoil in Africa? There's turmoil everywhere. We had an insurrection earlier this year in America. Guys, every country you look at, there's some group of people that aren't happy, and people die every day. Go to Chicago and look how many people get murdered every day. That's turmoil, if you ask me. Look at our border in the United States. That's turmoil, if you ask me. Why is Africa being singled out? There was a coup in Cambodia, as these things happen. Uh, you know, you have to, when you take a step back, say that this is less about a particular region having an issue, and it's more about a question of what systems does the world need in the 21st century. We need to exit the 21st century with no presidents, no CEOs, no kings, no one at the top. And we need to exit with much better decision making tools and a full recognition of human fallacies, cognitive biases, and the ability to actually understand truth in an absolute sense as a synthesis of many, many different inputs and observations. If we don't have that ability, the human race is done. We're going extinct because the reality is that one bad actor with these asymmetrical technologies that are existential can use them to end the human race. And we've seen that there are certain bad actors out there that feel entirely comfortable with an extinction event. So it's less about turmoil, it's more about systems, and it's more about asking what should the right systems be. Humans are going to be living a lot longer. And because cognition, memory, information can now be outsourced, it can now be put into the commons. The ideas of the past are eternal. You know, if you were born in the 7th century BC and the people in the 6th century would never know anything about you other than what stories left behind and occasionally a little bit of writing. That was just the truth for most of humanity for a long, long time. Now we live in a situation where everything's recorded, everything's documented, everything's analyzed, and that thought, that cognition, that will is extended long after we die. Look at foundations representing family interests. So, given that that's the case, the human race needs different social systems and structures to be able to handle that. And a lot of the turmoil in Africa, in particular, has to do directly with old systems causing so much pain, corruption, and harm that the young who now see that the world can be better are demanding equality, demanding change, and it's creating a lot of strife. And that means a lot of those governments are going to radically change in the next 20 or 30 years. And the new leaders that come in, those in their 30s and 40s and 50s, with new systems and new technology, are going to radically change the entire face of Africa. And in my view, make it one of the wealthiest continents in the world. Serious question: hot chocolate or coffee? Well, you can put them both together. That's called a Florentine. But coffee I drink every day. Hot chocolate from time to time. What are the qualities in a person that encourage you to work with them? I look for people first who have the capacity to listen and entertain ideas that they didn't come up with, in some cases, strongly disagree with. You can't really have an effective collaboration or relationship if people are talking past each other or if people are unwilling to admit that the world is not completely contained within their own skull, that there's a world outside of them and they can be wrong. That's the basis for all learning, and that's the basis for all construction. Then you look at temperament, and so people have to be emotionally stable. They have to be cool and collected when stress gets dialed up. Everyone has their breaking points, but the ability to be emotionally stable and the ability to handle enormous amounts of stress means that they can survive the rigors of a startup. They can survive a lot of difficult situations. Then we look for leadership skills. And so, can you communicate well? Can you inspire people? Can you build trust with people? Leadership is a lot about asking people to do things at times that are difficult for them, a little bit outside of their comfort zone, or in some cases, make sacrifices for a greater good. So you can't motivate people with pain and money. These are short term things and they always brew hate and resentment. And you can't lie to people. You always have to tell them the truth. So if you have to tell people difficult truths, but still ask them to make sacrifices and push forward. That's a leadership skill. And there are many techniques and tools to do that. But really, it comes down to relationships and trust. If you know your boss is always listening, if you know your boss has empathy, your boss has the capacity to entertain that he or she could be wrong, and they can build those relationships, then it's much easier for people to lead and much easier for people to feel comfortable bringing information to someone that may be uncomfortable or difficult. It wasn't too long ago in the age of kings that the only person who could tell off the king and also tell the king bad news was the jester. And it was a common practice in the courts that the jester was the one who broke the bad news. Your Majesty, I regret to inform you that our fleet sunk. Bad stuff like that. We lost the battle. So you need to have that rapport. You need to have the ability to communicate effectively in that relationship. Up above and beyond that, we look for passion. We look for people who have a tremendous desire to excel and patience. So passion and patience are just beautiful things together. Passion gives you the ability to show up every single day and make it a little bit better than it was the day before. And patience gives you the ability to do that over a long period of time. Many skills, many endeavors are exponential. There's an old saying that people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and vastly underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. And it's absolutely true. And so patience and passion together are big things for success and work. And then the other feature is creativity. And creativity is this ability to not get stuck in orthodoxy. So the world works a certain way, products work a certain way, and you have to get comfortable with the ability to say, what if, and just play around with things and not feel embarrassed for rocking the boat and go and do crazy stuff. If you pair creativity with patience and passion, you will almost always get amazing products in the long term. Because even if you're wrong in the first few iterations, eventually you get it right, and then you can show people something very beautiful. The academic process at times punishes this and at times rewards this. It just depends on the field, the incentives, and the particulars of the person. But where they get things right is when they encourage creativity. And so these are some of the things that we definitely look for when someone works with us or for us, or we look for in a partnership. And ultimately, it's all wrapped around with integrity and values. You have to have integrity, values, and principles that are discernible. You have to know that the people in the room really do value something and they are actually going to fight for those things. We are a values based, mission oriented organization, and protocols are ultimately values and mission oriented. And the immutability of such things is what gives our industry its value, uh, and why people join it and believe in it. All the other institutions we have are bankrupt. You look at the CDC or the Federal Reserve or the Senate or the Congress or the US military, all these things. There's a lot of people who feel that these institutions have let us down and they're no longer fundamentally honest. There's some place somewhere where someone's lying about something, or they just don't care that the institution isn't doing its job. For example, the Veterans Administration, for a very long time, there seemed to be a great apathy to the suffering of our veterans. People get traumatic brain injuries and they come back to America and have an extraordinarily high suicide rate, PTSD rate, and disability rate. And they'd say, hey, it's just headaches, or hey, it's not real, or well, maybe we'll treat it, but not really. And they ask these people to make these sacrifices for the nation. We owe that to them. So when you do this to those people, people start losing respect for the legitimacy of the institution. And so they want to replace the institutions with ones they do respect. We're starting to realize that the virtue of the individual is not a sustainable form of governance. So instead, we rely upon the virtue of the protocol, the cold, austere, dispassionate, objective protocol, where it doesn't care if it's good or bad. It will just continue chirping away and doing the things that it was programmed to do, just like the laws of physics. Gravity applies to us all, whether it is convenient or not. What attributes will the fourth generation of cryptocurrencies have? I think the fourth generation cryptocurrencies have to enable a different form of computation than the computation we can do. And I think that the fourth generation also has to be a multi resource model for consensus. So the way the network works, instead of being proof of stake or proof of work or proof of X, it has to be a collection of proofs that are distinctly different. And they use different resources. Some maybe mining, and some maybe tokens, and some maybe merit. And being able to combine those together in one sustainable system means that you have a much more resilient system. And different modes of computing means that you can now bring on new applications that we didn't have before. And the fourth generation has to have all the other properties. It has to have scalability, interoperability, and sustainability, in addition to smart contracts, in addition to decentralization. It's like Russian nesting dolls. Mhm. Charles, has there been any progress with U.S. corporations or governments adopting Cardano? Well, I guess you guys are just going to have to come to the Cardano Summit, September 25th, 26th, digitally or physically, and find out. Who's your favorite comedian? Well, living is Dave Chappelle. Dead is George Carlin. Which Lean versus AGDA? They do very different things. For mathematics, Lean and the Hoskinson Center for Formal Mathematics is going to be using that. It's going to be a very fun announcement, very fun speech to make. It's been a dream of mine for over 10 years, and I'm very excited to see Jeremy Avogad and others at CMU do that. And AGDA, I think, is great for computer science stuff and program verification and these things. And it could be a great spec language for Plutus. If you can recommend only one of IO Global's white papers to read, which would it be? I would recommend the GKL 15 paper because that really epitomizes how the scientists at this organization think and how we build things in layers. That's the foundation upon which a lot of the consensus research that the organization's done over the last 6 years has been done. And it provides some foundational definitions. So if you can read that paper, you're comfortable with that paper, then you can read Ouroboros and Ouroboros Praus and Genesis and the rest of the bang, and you'll really understand what's going on and why it's novel and interesting. Does Ethereum Classic have a future in the crypto market? Well, the interesting thing about Ethereum Classic is there's great potential for enormous innovation. A lot can be done in the code is law space. And I think we could definitely make major and significant contributions to that. There is some toxicity in certain community members there that is allowed to persist and amplify under the guise of, oh, well, we just need to give everyone a platform. It's one thing to give a universal platform to ideas. It's another thing to tolerate people who all they do is say, my way is the only way. Everyone else is wrong. And if you disagree with me, you're evil. And we see that in Ethereum Classic. There's some of that. And it turns off an enormous amount of potential for adoption. And also, it doubles down on the perception that it's basically a dead, angry community. So we have Mantis. We've been working extremely hard on it. We've made a lot of progress in productizing Mantis. That code base benefits Cardano because it's one of the candidates for an EVM sidechain for Cardano. So we can run Ethereum smart contracts in Cardano. That's kind of the pawn strategy. And we're implementing Ouroboros BFT right now with it to start testing that. And we'll continue productizing it. But if there is a desire for innovation, which we'll find out with the treasury system, then I think we can do amazing things and really double down on a great philosophy that is underexplored in the space. Then I do believe it'll have a future, and it will get a lot of adoption support from Bitcoin style people who agree with the philosophy but would never go over to Ethereum proper. But if it doesn't get the treasury system, there's no funds to innovate. There's no reason to innovate. And it's very clear the community just enjoys the status quo. The problem that Ethereum Classic has is that the technology of Ethereum is not the technology of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is stable. If you're comfortable with what Bitcoin's doing for you today and you think that that use case is fine, it'll be much the same 50 years from now as it is today. Whereas Ethereum is not stable. We're seeing that with the high transaction fees and all the security problems and so forth. And that's why they're building Ethereum 2 to replace Ethereum with a model that is much more sustainable. So you can't stay in the same place with an unstable element unless you're prepared to accept all the limitations of that system and all the frustrations of that system. Ethereum itself is not. And when Ethereum 2 occurs, there's going to be no innovation transferring from Ethereum 2 or very limited to Ethereum Classic because now they're running in completely different systems with different philosophies. So the system has to change, and either Ethereum Classic has to regress and become much simpler and much more like Bitcoin, or it has to pay for a protracted long-term innovation campaign in order to transform itself into something that has the equivalent or better type of utility, but is sustainable and stable. And this is a big decision the ecosystem has to make. If I wanted to work on something like Bitcoin, I just work on Bitcoin. We have every resource and capability to create a full node for Bitcoin, and it'd be a lot of fun to do that. So it's not super appealing to me to regress the system to something more simplistic. And we have every ability to, conduct a great campaign to evolve and build something interesting, unique, and novel. We've demonstrated that with Cardano, and we've demonstrated that with a lot of the work that we've done on the research and development side throughout the industry. So the community has to make a decision. Where do they want to go? What do they want to do? And I think that decision is going to have profound implications. They can either embrace the toxicity that they currently have at the periphery and bring it into the mainstream to a point where that becomes the only voice in ETC, or they can eschew it and move into the future and actually get something significantly better. And that debate is currently happening right now. And I think it's going to reach a conclusion by the end of this year or Q1 of next year. And we'll all have clarity. From our side, we learned a lot. It was really fun building a full Ethereum node. It's something I never really had a chance to do, and we finally did it. And it will benefit Cardano because we get an EVM sidechain more likely than not out of it. And we can upgrade that chain to stay on par with what Ethereum is doing on its computational model. And it'll benefit smart contract developers accordingly. But if we want to go beyond that and have sharded proof of work and much higher formal verification smart contracts, an actually explicit codification of code as law to the point where we can actually write books about it, these types of things, that would require a much larger investment. We're prepared to go down that road, but we don't work for free in that respect. We have to be we have to set passions aside as a company and accept the commercial realities and limitations of things. And there are things I donate money to, but not to vanity projects. The donation I'm making for the Hoskinson Center is $20 million of my money to CMU. We're just closing that arrangement right now. And that's to rewrite all of the laws of mathematics in a computer language called Lean. So we can actually start constructively proving all kinds of interesting things. And my belief is mathematicians of the future will use this paradigm because it's so powerful. And eventually artificial intelligence can be married with the paradigm to assist mathematicians in the writing of proofs and the discovery of new theorems and hypotheses, and conjectures. And so I'm very excited about that. And a project of that nature needs to live exclusively in academia. And the amount of money I've given will ensure that not only does a center exist, but that it has an endowment to perpetually be there. And as that center produces better outcomes, I'll continue cutting checks of equivalent size, and it'll become an institute, and it'll grow from an institute to potentially an entire department. And people get their PhDs in this domain. And this is like the future of math. That's a donation, and that benefits the entire world, and it's something that belongs to the entire world. Endlessly working on a vanity project that has no use and utility or community desire to upgrade itself, that makes no sense. There are better cryptocurrencies, in my view, to make contributions to. I would rather write code for Litecoin at this point than ETC if there's no desire to innovate, because at least there it's maybe potentially a good test net for Bitcoin to explore new features and functionality, or just work on Bitcoin directly and maybe find a way to get simplicity and all these other things into Bitcoin to make the space more interesting and competitive. It makes no sense to just continue contributing off of this bizarre belief that somehow all these people from Ethereum will see the light and move over to Ethereum Classic. If there was a time for that, it would have happened over the last 4 years. It didn't. Grow up and move on and create a real life justification to exist. And if you can't do that, then you just have to accept that you're a calcified dead god floating on the astral plane, a relic to the past rather than something real. So it's a fascinating social experiment. It's a fascinating example of governance. If you are in these fields of academic study. This is a great thing to write a master's thesis on. This is a great thing to get you write your dissertation on. I think you could learn an enormous amount, and it's also a great lesson in crypto governance and what can and can't be done. No one knows the outcome. I certainly don't. I really am rooting for and hoping that ETC can get there, but we'll see what happens and where the votes go, where people migrate to, and regardless of what happens, the caravan moves on, and our engineers are always doing useful, interesting things, and there's always other things to do, and I'm at peace. This is an interesting question that I actually don't understand myself. It says, why do the link holders hate Cardano so much? Does seem to be a disproportionate amount of attacks from Link to Cardano. And first, this is senseless because it's a layer two thing. It's not its own layer one protocol. It's got a token and it lives in a certain place, but it fundamentally values Chainlink. It's fundamentally valuable to Chainlink to work on many different platforms. So criticizing arbitrarily one platform makes no sense because the Cardano smart contract developers could be Chainlink customers. Yet, despite that, we do see an enormous amount of negativity and hate. And there's one particular account that actually has crossed the boundary into slander that would be criminal in many jurisdictions. And we've even considered pursuing a criminal complaint, especially for certain tweets that have come out because of the nature of those tweets and how damaging they can be if people actually believe them. So I'm not sure. I really don't know, why they do this, why they think this way. Usually, when you have curation and leadership in an ecosystem, the curators and leaders in that ecosystem, decentralized or not, they call their community and say, "Let's calm down a little bit and understand the nature of how we work." And it's better when we have a big tent instead of a small tent, and we're not loyal to any particular blockchain. We're agnostic in that respect, and all these people are potentially customers. All the haters are doing is just shutting off millions of people from being their customers. Furthermore, inviting those people to compete with them and build better solutions. And I guess that's just a community decision that they have to make. And some in the community, very loud ones, are making it. But back to the toxicity of the periphery, the problem with Reddit, Twitter, Telegram is they amplify these things to unnecessary levels. So it's hard to discern whether this is a belief at the core or a belief at the periphery. And we're just getting exposed to it because we don't happen to live in those forums on a daily basis. And ultimately, at some point, we'll see it flush through. If it's persistent and continuous, it probably is at the core. If it's at the edges, I think it'll fade away over time. Slash biz is filled with miserable KHV in their 20s. That's why they attack you. The 4chan has a reputation for being exceedingly harsh on people, and I've been called everything under the sun: narcissistic, sociopath, soy boy, pathological liar, rah, rah, rah. And actually, some of that percolates into the Ethereum community, and they certainly say the same things. And then they just repost pages of fiction books that certainly sell well, but don't have any bearing in reality as their evidence. And of course, no one seems to have critical thinking skills anymore. And look at the track record, and look at what we've done, where we've been, and the companies we lead, and realize that don't believe everything you read. This is the consequence of anonymity paired with no accountability, is that the id gets overrepresented and people just say stuff. And you have, as a human being, to develop the ability to control your reactions and control your emotional investments and things. And I tend to look at it in reciprocal forms. If someone invests an enormous amount of time, effort, money into trying to get a message or belief out there, then it is probably worthwhile legitimizing that to the extent of engaging with it. For example, whether people want to believe it or not, there's a large group of Americans who believe that the US election in 2020 was fraudulent. And those adherents to that belief are still holding conferences like Mike Lindell and others. And they keep thumping their chests and saying that something is there. The proper response to that is not ridicule or fact checking. The proper response to that is engagement, because they've proven they're not going to go away. They're very dogged in their beliefs, and those beliefs attack the very legitimacy of the nation state. They cannot be allowed to persist if meaningful percentages of the American population hold them. You have to debate them, address them, and work your way through them. And then what happens is, if you do that, you de-radicalize the movement, and you'll never convince everybody. There's still going to be crazy people at the periphery who believe the shark people or the lizard people from Mars are in charge of everything, and we're living in a flat Earth, and the fluoride in the water is what's killing everybody. You can't win with everybody. Okay, it's religion at certain points, but what you can do is disarm the movement through engagement. Now contrast that with Flash Biz. What is the investment for what they say when they post their memes and their pictures and their photoshops and their hate speech, all these negative things? Nothing. It's just them shit posting on a keyboard like a gamer does. So why should there be any engagement or interaction or emotional reaction to this? The consequences of them saying that is nothing. This is why I really do not like legislation against hate speech or attempts to silence people. You let people talk, and very quickly you'll know who's legitimate and who's crazy just by letting people talk. And society has social mechanisms to kind of sort things out. And if certain person really strongly feels about something and is really willing to die for that, you give them at least a platform to understand why, because there's probably a kernel of truth there. There's probably something there that really is right. For example, it's very clear that the institution of the mass media in the United States and the social networks in the United States did not like Donald Trump. That's an objective reality. If you take a look at negative versus positive coverage and how editorializing worked its way into things that were probably objective newsmaking, should have been objective newsmaking. That blatant reality jaded a perception that because they had a particular political leaning, that could go then to fraud. So not addressing that underlying issue just legitimizes the belief that fraud does exist, and it's not being covered because the people who are supposed to be the watchdogs and conduct these investigations are compromised in some way. We actually see that happening with the WHO, for example. If you look at the reporting on the origins of coronavirus, they issue a report with no investigation saying a lab leak didn't happen. And slowly but surely, they're walking it back and trying to find a plausible excuse for it. But it's very clear that this is not an objective, absolutely objective research. In fact, there's a lot of evidence, circumstantial and otherwise, that at the very least, it could have been something that was discovered in nature, brought to a lab to study, and one of the lab techs got infected. and then it spread slowly at first and then exponentially later throughout Wuhan and then throughout the entire world. That's a much more plausible Occam's razor type of hypothesis, given the facts and circumstances that we know, then this is just a random zoonotic disease. Because if it was a zoonotic disease, there would be probably something that occurred in rural China that worked its way into an urban center, not the urban center that happens to have the only lab in the entire country that studies this particular type of virus. But then if you have these viewpoints, mainstream media seems to be saying you're a conspiracy theorist and you get brutally attacked. And people ask why? Why is this narrative not allowed to be debated and discussed? Why are we not allowed to apply critical thinking, look at facts and circumstances, and have opinions about these things? And the fact that that's difficult, there's a transitivity to that, to other things like election fraud or vaccines and so forth. And because that transitivity occurs, it causes a cascading of social problems. So you have to understand these. And if you engage people, you have a dialogue with people, you'll actually discover these things. And going back to attributes we look forward to in employees, we look at active listening. Well, there's an example of that. Listen to people, engage with people. There's no listening in /biz. It's impossible in that medium. So there's no value to that medium from a communication viewpoint. All it is just the ability to take subconscious random things, whether it be sex things or your anger about certain things, and just broadcast it to the entire world. Okay. If they happen to be directed in our direction or me, so they'll be directed somewhere else the next day of the week. That's the reality of that. But don't allow that to influence or impact you. Don't take any emotional impact to it, but do take an emotional impact on the bigger things like people's inability to communicate in general with each other, or people believing the worst in each other without evidence. Yeah, this is a good follow-on for Mr. Cookie. The problem with conspiracy is that they don't listen to reason. You can't listen. You can listen to them, but they don't listen to you. There's no dialogue. They won't listen to you until they feel like you've connected to the root cause of their anger, whatever that is. Then you can have a real dialogue. There's actually a book that's written, and I'll find the title for you guys. But the whole point of the book is about how to have difficult conversations with people, cult members, religious fanatics, ideologues, whatever they may be. And you can talk to these people. It's not, you don't just write them off. What you have to do though is don't tell them how the world works. Don't disagree with them. Take a step back and very dispassionately keep listening until you get to bedrock of where the foundations of their beliefs come from. So the anti-vax, the anti-Wuhan lab leak theory, the anti-media, the anti-all this stuff, there are root causes to all of that. And it usually stems to they feel that institutions are corrupted. And because they're corrupted, they can't do their job, and all the complexity that they manage and the things we have to take for granted that they say we can't anymore. So then they're looking for alternative institutions to tell them things. And that's where demagoguery comes in. That's where bad leaders come in. That's where crackpots come in and so forth. And they connect to those and they build a relationship with those because those people don't have the same dynamics of the corrupt institutions in their mind. Almost always you'll see that this is the case with a lot of these conspiracy theorists. So to have a productive dialogue, get there with them. And then once you're there, say, I understand how you feel. But then you can start doing thought experiments and other things and gradually work and build your way up to, hey, maybe it's okay. Maybe the lizard people aren't trying to kill us, and et cetera, et cetera. But there are real conspiracies in the world. Let's be clear. Propaganda Due, for example, was a conspiracy against the Italian government and was quite successful for a while. There are secret organizations and other things. I took a great class on the great courses that talked about secret organizations and conspiracies, 24 lectures long, and amazing to see how much influence secret organizations have had over the direction of the human race. I mean, half of of the founding fathers were Freemasons. So there certainly are secret societies. There certainly are conspiracies. There certainly are events that occur where the official narrative is not correct, and uh, there's another narrative that's actually correct. And yeah, there's certainly been horrible things that even the U.S. government has done to its own people. Like for example, MK Ultra, Operation Northwoods, the Phoenix Project during Vietnam, dozens of things like this, and hundreds more that we didn't know because the family jewels were burnt and the church committee couldn't uncover them. And there's still things probably going on today which we're not aware about that are much worse, and all kinds of horrible technologies that are being explored and looked at. But in general, to infer from the existence of these types of things that there's a global grand design and conspiracy controlling the entire human race, then you have to ask yourself who can be so incredibly competent to both enable this to be done in a shadowy, hidden way, but also incompetent to run the world the way it's being run. The world is deeply fractured and divided. Um, Nobody's really agreeing with each other right now. I've met many heads of state. Some of ones I've met, I couldn't even believe they were a head of state, and they seem to actually be in control of their own country. If there was a grand world order controlling everything, that wouldn't be the case. There would be a lot more competence. The world is very complicated, and people aren't very good at dealing with complexity. So what they do instead is they try to simplify where and when they can. And it's easy to replace complexity with they don't want you to, a phrase like that. And all these conspiracy theorists, you know, they fail basic logic usually when they put their ideas together. And some can be amazingly persuasive, but most of them can't be. But you have to understand the people who fall for these things almost always are good people, and they're just good people who are hurt in some way. And you have to find the source of the pain, the deep cause of that hurt, the principal complaint, the principal concern, and then you can start building from there and almost always have a productive dialogue. Ah, there we go. Difficult Conversations by Stone, Payton, and Heen. Did you improve your listening, Charles? My chief of staff reminds me from time to time that I haven't gotten to Nirvana yet on that topic, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. It's a lifetime pursuit. It's one of my weaknesses. Are you vaccinated? Which one did you get? I got the Pfizer vaccine, 2 shots. I wanted Novavax, but that damn company can never seem to launch a damn product. I think Novavax is the safest of the vaccines, but the Pfizer BioNTech mRNA vaccine is pretty damn good. I got it. My dad got it. My brother got it. Over 1 billion people have gotten it. So I put my money where my mouth was. If vax are bad, I guess I'm going to die. So you guys can just watch my health and see if I'm getting sicker and weaker or healthier, and then you can make your own decisions. No blood clots, no medical problems, just had a full workup, feeling fine. Or maybe I'm part of the evil New World Order conspiracy trying to convince you otherwise. How is the Dejed project going, Charles? We should have some releases next week, blog posts, videos, these things. And Jean Frederic is actually writing the code for it. And we're going to probably work with MetaLamp to implement it. So we'll get that done. Got the billionaire saline shot. You know where I got my Pfizer vaccine? I got it at the Albertsons in Cheyenne. So there you go. If they're giving billionaire saline shots in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Albertsons, that's a pretty special Albertsons, man. It's a great thing. The spike proteins mutate over time, Charles. How exactly? How? I can't wait for you to tell me the molecular biology on that one. Unless you're talking about the virus mutating, which, yeah, of course it does. All viruses do. We're here with COVID for life, guys. Every year, you're going to have to get your COVID shot. And what's going to happen is it's going to be mixed in with the influenza shots. The reason why governments got so scared about this is it probably was made with gain and function research. And it was the first virus of its kind where that happened. And it creates multi-system failure. You get myocarditis, you get neurological conditions, there's endothelial problems. It obviously fucks up your lungs. And so it scared the hell out of everybody because it was a new thing. And new diseases scare the hell out of doctors and public health officials. And it turned out this one wasn't as bad as we thought it could have been. But it's the beginning of the new things, and we need to have proper responses and feedback loops. There's another interesting question that comes up. Charles, are you comfortable taking a vaccine that was developed only after approximately 6 months instead of the normal R&D of 5 years? The technology platform that they were looking at has about 30 years of R&D history behind it. And it's actually been deployed in veterinarian vaccines. And there's just an enormous amount of understanding of mRNA. And these are things that people had been thinking about for a long time. Now, the actual development process of bringing a drug to market, what people don't understand is that you can only ever get to a certain level of certainty before a drug is approved prior to everybody taking it. And that usually is a threshold of the tens to hundreds of thousands of people. 5 years or 10 years is not more people. It's just bureaucracy and slower adjustment of the trials and a little bit more time to watch those people. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the same set. So, you inject people after that, it's the same set, absolute set. It's just you have less time to watch for long-term side effects. So then there's a question of what type of long-term side effects would occur with a respiratory virus vaccine. And it's not like we're just new at making respiratory virus vaccines. We've been making them for a very long time. New technology or not, we've been making them for a very long time. So we have a pretty good idea of the symptom space, the problem space of where things can occur, whether it be Guillain-Barré or otherwise. And there's certainly been vaccines in the past that have caused issues. And so I think it was a rotavirus vaccine caused some pretty severe side effects in 1 out of every 100,000, which you wouldn't see in the phase 3 clinical trial. So at the end of the day, you have to roll the dice. And it's not a decision of getting a vaccine or not getting a vaccine. It's a decision of nature's vaccine versus man's vaccine. Because the way that coronavirus or any respiratory virus with this level of virality, this spread, is that we're all going to get exposed at some point. As a CEO of a company, I meet hundreds of people every month. I travel extensively. I go to big events with you guys, like down in Miami, for example, and there's hundreds of people at that event. One of my security detail there tested positive for COVID. He's on the plane with me. So I'm going to be exposed repeatedly to coronavirus. And my brother's a doctor. He's up in Gillette. He worked in the ICU. He had patients come in, people he knew who got COVID and were on ventilators. Some died. This is a real disease. So if I'm going to get exposed to it, I'm probably at some point going to contract it. And then you look at the side effect and long-term problem profile there. Anosmias, you lose your smell, you lose your taste, neurological problems. Don't believe me? Look at the guy who ran Texas Roadhouse, the CEO there. He killed himself because he had long COVID. There's dozens of things that can go wrong, from heart damage to permanent lung damage, as a potential side effect of nature's vaccine. Okay? So if I'm going to go get nature's vaccine, I'm basically signing myself up to a 0.3 in my age group and weight group chance of death. I'm signing myself up to a 1% chance of losing my taste and smell long term. I'm signing myself up to a lot of potential respiratory problems and a long recovery time, potentially weeks to months. If I take man's vaccine, I know what the profile is in the short term. I don't know what the profile is in the long term, but I also don't know what the profile is in the long term for COVID. Some of these people with long COVID, I've met them, they may be suffering from fatigue and problems for years to decades. So that's a permanent side effect that they deal with. It's not made up, it's real. And there are many people suffering from that, millions of people just in the United States, lingering recovery, and it's horrible for them. So I already know that that's a potential long-term side effect. Then we look at the vaccine side and we say, okay, which mechanisms would cause devastating side effects? And so you have some videos, microclots or this, that, and the other. And oh, look, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they had clots in people's brain. Well, we know why that occurred. It occurred because the DNA inside of the J&J vaccine that comes in through the adenovirus, when it interacts with your DNA and makes that RNA that makes the protein, every about 1 in a million, it'll do it the wrong way. It'll make the wrong protein, and that protein creates a bad reaction that usually results in a blood clot. Okay, it's a rare bug in that software, and it's an endemic problem with that platform, which says that's probably not a good platform. Well, that's J&J and AstraZeneca. What about Pfizer and Moderna? They're totally different platforms. They're totally different pieces of machinery. So all these people run around and say it's going to change your DNA. They can't even explain how. They say, well, I saw it on YouTube. I saw it here. And they're so dogged in that belief. Why do they believe these things? It comes back down to the exact same situation. They don't trust institutions. I don't look at vaccine deniers or hoaxers or these anti-vax people and say they're bad people or incompetent people. I say they're distrustful people because they have been lied to again and again and again, and they're deeply skeptical. And they say, well, hang on a second here. Let's slow things down a little bit. If there wasn't a global pandemic, I would agree with them, but there is one. And the reality is they're going to get vaccinated one way or the other. They're either going to be vaccinated with nature's vaccine or man's vaccine. And going back to institutional mistrust, one of the biggest lies our mass media has told is that if you get the disease and recover, that some way you're not protected. Somehow all of immunology and medical science doesn't apply anymore. The reality is you probably have a great degree of resistance against all variants if you've recovered. That's just the truth if you look at the data and statistics. Now, you can enhance that resistance with a vaccine, and we should encourage people to take boosters at some point, especially if they're blended with other things like influenza, because resistance naturally wears off over time, okay? And you can get a disease again and again and again after you've recovered from the disease. This happens all the time with people. But to say that they're unvaccinated is completely wrong. They took nature's vaccine and they actually had to deal with a much harsher side effect profile than man's vaccine, but they probably have some degree of comparability. So when you tell people in mass media that that doesn't count in any sense of the word and that you're being irresponsible if you don't get vaccinated after you've recovered, it creates distrust and it creates a belief that there's an alternative narrative here. Instead, what they should be saying is you can do better and amplify your resistance. And if you're in an at-risk group, like the elderly or so forth, you should amplify it because you need as much help as you can get. Because when you get over the age of 75, the mortality rate's 5%. It's horrible. But we don't say it that way. Instead, we say it another way, and it makes people instantly distrustful. And add 12 other things that have been done that are not science-based, but are propaganda-based. And at some point, you're going to reach a tipping point where people just opt out and they say, screw it, I'll take nature's vaccine. I'm going to roll the dice. I don't know, but I don't want to be part of this thing. But at the end of the day, I'm a vector as if anyone else. I'm a CEO. I meet hundreds of people, thousands of people. It would be morally wrong and irresponsible if I had something that could prevent me from getting sick and becoming a vector for a disease to not do so. And I put my money where my mouth was. I took the shot, and I'm fine. I feel fine. Now, maybe we're all wrong. And let's ask the consequences of that. Guys, let's really think that through. Billions of people have now been vaccinated. Billions. If this is going to permanently damage the human race, it is World War III in 3 years or 5 years. First, if I die, then the other people who took the vaccine die. What, half or more the planet's going to die in 3 to 5 years? And then if we all get really horribly sick and there's terrible side effects, that kind of mass destruction where Fortune 500 CEOs, almost everyone in the Senate and the Congress, current and former presidents, all these people have been injected with this, are now going to get horribly ill and sick. That's not going to create one of the most catastrophic social events in human history. What type of conspiratorial thinking do you have to not recognize that that's the end of humanity if that's the case? Do you really want to live in a world where that's the case? I'd rather be dead than live through that. Nuclear war is going to happen. Everything's going to go to hell if that's the case. And they say, no, it'll do something else. You can be controlled with 5G and magnets and all this other stuff. And again, the people spraying this garbage have no understanding of science. None. They can't tell you the mechanism. And where's the evidence? 100+ countries have this stuff, and no public health minister anywhere. I know these ministers. I've met them. There's no grand thing where they're being told by shadowy people, you must do this. And you can't hide a lie this big. You can't, with so many people involved, so many things involved. But people just can't get there because their faith in institutions is so broken. They'd rather trust somebody they've never met over YouTube or Facebook or some other place and say, my beliefs are absolute. There probably will be side effects for some, and we've already seen them reported. Some people who receive a vaccine have died. Millions of people with COVID have died, and millions more will die before this epidemic is over. That's just the reality. And the healthcare industry, for the most part, while it does focus on treatments rather than cures, the people who work in it are compassionate, empathetic people, the nurses, the doctors, the support staff, and they really do not want to see people die. Many people listening here in this live stream are in the healthcare industry. And I don't believe for a moment that they go to work and say, boy, how do I make Pfizer money today? Yet they are vaccinating people. They're taking it themselves and recommending people take it because they have to deal with the consequences of those who don't. If you look at the statistics about breakthrough cases, they're very small for those hospitalized and die. Get the Delta variant if you're vaccinated, but usually it's a mild to asymptomatic infection for the vast majority of people, which means the vaccine is working. If you look at the ICUs, with people who have COVID in them, the vast majority of them in the ICUs are unvaccinated. And the ones who are vaccinated in the ICUs, the vast majority of them are those who you would expect to be there with COVID. Old people with diabetes and cancer and heart disease and morbidly obese and all kinds of comorbidities that massively reduce your ability to fight off an opportunistic infection. And a lot of them die with, not from COVID. They die from their underlying mortalities, but they get counted as a COVID death. So vaccines work. That's why we don't die of smallpox anymore. It's why polio is mostly gone. And those who believe otherwise, they have every right to believe that. And they have every right to be part of society, and that's okay. But they do have to take personal accountability for the fact that when they're wrong with those beliefs could end up killing them, as the people in the ICUs who had an opportunity to be vaccinated and didn't are learning. And I'm comfortable with that. It's a free society. You have to give people the freedom to have control over their lives and their bodies. I don't stand for mandatory vaccination or compulsory vaccination. I stand for reason and convincing people that things are one way or the other. It scares the hell out of people when you do it the other way. And also, it's a very dystopian society to say that. Why is your entire identity just talking about all the amazing things you've done and all the places you go? Your speech pattern analysis aggregate is mostly modest bragging. So when we talk about all the science, the papers, we talk about the stories, all these, all that stuff. We talk about my passions like Legends of Valor, and so that's just amazing things we've done and places you go. You see, this is the other thing that's amazing to me. There's a group of people in the cryptocurrency space that absolutely believe I'm an egomaniac. And every single thing that I do, say, and think is all about aggrandizing Charles Hoskinson. That's what they believe. I mentioned that I go to all these places in the context of look how big the community is and look at all the amazing things the community are doing. The people that I visit in Africa don't have, many cases, the same networks that I do. So when I mention it, I bring them up and I put them into the spotlight. For example, I met a Mongol camel herder in the Gobi Desert who owns Bitcoin. He's not exactly on Twitter tweeting every day. Good luck finding even a cell phone signal, much less internet connectivity. So by mentioning to the world that we've met that person, we've done something with him, we talked to him, it tells his story. But apparently that's all the places I go. Why? Because you're one of the guys who just has convinced I'm a certain way. And this is a great example, Brendan, of confirmation bias in the human's ability to find evidence supporting pre-existing beliefs that they have. If you believe I'm a certain way, you'll find a statement or a behavior that confirms that. If you believe I'm another way, you'll find a statement and a behavior that confirms that. So then let's look at objective reality. If I'm this narcissistic control freak that just brags and brags and brags, then you would assume that we've structured the projects I work on, the company I work at, in a way where I can never be replaced and it's all about me. Meanwhile, if you look at Cardano, every single day, the leadership, execution, and ecosystem gets more decentralized. The people who run the ledger are the stake pool operators, which very few are us. The governance system Catalyst, every round gets more and more decentralized. 250,000 votes, 33,000 unique wallets, Catalyst circles forming, of which I'm not in, other people are. The foundation is growing and stepping into a role, and at some point will become more prominent on the community management than we are, and so forth. So at some point, I'm completely irrelevant in any respect, and will just fade away. That's not exactly what a megalomaniacal narcissist does. They kind of make sure they're always in the picture one way or the other. And the other thing is I'm completely comfortable fading away. It's a good thing. It's the nature of the technology for it to evolve and grow. It has to have that capacity. You'll notice something that of the 111 research papers we've written, my name's not on a single one of them. I was so vain, I'd find a way to weasel my way on those like Craig Wright does with his. I don't, because I don't directly participate in the research. And I only put my name on things that I wrote myself and made meaningful and significant contributions to. And we try very hard to create a strong platform for the scientists and give them the ability to speak their mind and have their spotlight. I'm very rarely, for example, appear on the Cardano 360 update we do every month. Instead, it's an aggregation of the community and the company and the different companies working on Cardano as their opportunity to actually see that. Now I have an AMA, sure, it's my fucking channel. I have a Twitter account, sure, it's my fucking channel. So I'm not allowed to have my own channels and people aren't allowed to follow me in that respect. And of course I say my and me on my personal channel because people are here to listen to me and think and hear my mind. But to you, that doesn't matter. Why? Because you're convinced. You've read stuff, you thought stuff, and you say, well, this is the way Charles is. That's why the technology we are building in this industry is so incredibly important, because you can't step outside of your biases. And it's really hard for a human being to do that, any human being, myself included. So we have to create social structures and institutions and governance models that don't require us to step outside of our biases. They expose them. One of the greatest innovations in the 21st century, in the last 20 years in businesses, has been data-driven decision-making and business analytics from big data. Why? Because if you start recording everything and analyzing everything, you start recognizing that you're making decisions based on biases and beliefs and behaviors that aren't grounded in actual reality. And the data analysis, they will tell you that. You'll see it. You'll say, hang on a second here, something is fundamentally wrong here. And if you choose to listen to it and believe it, suddenly you make amazing decisions. It was one of the first things that Satya Nadella did when he took over Microsoft. Is he forced everybody to talk to each other, unified all the systems and the data, and started analyzing and applying AI to it. And then suddenly Microsoft started making significantly better decisions. And they grew from like $400 billion company to a multi-trillion-dollar company that's much more resilient and stronger. And if Nadella dies tomorrow, Microsoft is still that entity because they're actually listening to objective reality and making decisions with objective reality. We should always aspire to do this in our personal lives, our organizational lives, and our governments. Those three levels of hierarchy and the global governance. We should always be asking, where are our perceptions, our biases, our beliefs getting in the way of our ability to compromise and objectively assess reality? And if we can't do this as a species, we can't handle the technology we have. It's a gift. The technology we've inherited and are developing right now requires a certain level of wisdom to operate responsibly. And right now, unfortunately, the technology's here, the wisdom's here. We need to catch up. And that missing gap of wisdom is collective intelligence, is objective reality, is the ability to analyze things and understand our own biases, understand that humans have linearity bias. We're really bad at assessing exponential growth. Understand people are terrible with statistics. Understand that people, when they make decisions, seldom make decisions with the right heuristics or even understand the right inputs required to make the right decisions. And people study these things every day. They write their dissertations on these things and so forth. Instead, we usually as a species tend to regress to these other things. And this is just a great example of that. You see what you want to see. Okay. Some people see me as a savior. Some people see me as a devil. Some people see me as humble. Some people see me as overwhelmingly narcissistic and arrogant. And it's all about me, 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 me. I. Some people see me as a genius. Some people see me as an academic fraud and a charlatan and can't do anything. I can't even program. I know nothing. All I can do is talk. And even when I talk, it's all just lies. And their evidence for it is wherever they look for it. And then they'll hold on to that and eschew anything to the contrary. You know, I could go and donate to a charity. It's vanity. He doesn't actually believe in that. He doesn't actually care in that. He's not even a real cowboy. I live on a ranch. I got bison. I listen to country music now. I hate country music, but damn it, it's everywhere. Starting to like it. That's how you know you're getting into the club. But no, he's not even that. It's all an act. Okay. Just believe what you believe. And if we've really done our work correctly, it actually doesn't matter because the system takes care of itself. It's self-correcting. It's self-healing. Another thing is like some of those fictional books. Oh, he bragged about going to CCR concerts and Steve Miller concerts. Actually, I've been. Not only have I been, I had them come and play at the IO Global Summit in 2019. I met Steve Miller. I met CCR. It's like he does that because he wants people to think he's older than he actually is. Yeah, because people can't use Google. It's like I tell him I'm 33. Oh, no. He pretends to be older than he actually is. No, believe it or not, people actually dress this way. I like the business and on the top, casual on the bottom look, jeans plus a collared shirt. It's perfect. I've been heads of state like this. It's a decent uniform. Yeah, I'm a little overweight. Yeah, I gained 40 pounds in being in this industry. Welcome to traveling 200 days a year, 250 days a year. Believe it or not, if I could look younger and more youthful, and I'd go do that, guys. I grew up in Hawaii. In Hawaii, all the television, the 1980s and 90s, when I was a kid there, it was all like 60s and 70s. I grew up watching Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. I grew up watching Lost in Space, all these things. I was homeschooled, so I listened to all the songs my mom listened to. She went to concerts all the time. She was a Pink Floyd fan, like Boston, like Journey. So that's what I listened to as a kid. You know, I kind of skipped the whole Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Third Eye Blind and Counting Crows generation. And I kind of stuck to the '80s rock, the '70s rock, and so forth. Is it so inconceivable that somebody has that belief? So I walk with a limp. I got gout. How many of you know I have gout? Come on. I have doctors when I publish my thing say your uric acid level's too high, Charles. Come on now. Yeah, I don't take my allopurinol as much as I should, although I've been better about that. Yeah, you kind of walk with a limp from time to time with gout. I've been very public about that. You can see my knobby right foot with the after effects of what gout does. God really fucks up your joints. Last attack, it got into my ankle. Yeah, I got an old man disease. First time I had a gout attack was in Japan many years ago. And I was staying in an Airbnb on the 14th floor, 15th floor of this building. It had one fucking elevator. I get up 2 o'clock in the morning, razor pain in my foot. Oh God, this is so painful. I call my dad. I said, Dad, I must have broken my toe or something. This is horrible. And he said, Well, what's going on? And I tell him the whole thing. He says, Hang up, send me a picture. So I sent him a picture. He texts me back. He says, That's gout. I said, Shit. I said, What do I do? He said, Can't do anything. Take steroids and this, that, and the other, and wait for it to go away, and they'll get you on treatment when you get back. I said, Okay. So I hobble over because I have a 7 a.m. meeting to the elevator, and I push the button. This Japanese guy comes in. He's like, No, the elevator's broken. Oh God, this is bad. So I had to hobble down those stairs with a gout foot. First time ever having a gout attack. One flight of stairs, another flight of stairs, another flight of stairs, and so forth. And I said, man, that was hard. And I tried to find a place to buy a damn cane. No place had cane or crutches I could find. Said, okay. So then that night I come back. I said, oh, thank God I'm back. It was a long, hard day. And I go to push the button in the damn elevator is still broken. I'm thinking to myself, I got to go up 14 flights of stairs, no crutches, no nothing, just a railing to brace me with a gout foot. Holy shit. So I get to that flight of stairs, and right at that moment, there's this old guy. He must be 80 years old, old Japanese guy. And we both kind of look at each other, and he looks a little haggard, and I got the gout foot. And he gives me a nod, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing this, man. So I take my step, and I go, oh. And he goes, ugh. And I go, ugh. And he goes, oh. And we're doing that. We're just doing that. Probably a fucking hour to go up all those stairs. He was on the floor above me. So that elevator was broken for weeks. So every time around the same time I get back, they tell me they were going to fix it that day. They never did. And I get there, the old guy's there with me. We go all the way up together. He'd nod as he comes by me. Sometimes I beat him, sometimes he beat me. But yeah, that was my first gout attack. you know, that's life. That's how that works. Um, and it's just extraordinary to me that people have different realities and they believe different things. But it's good fiction, and people can believe whatever they want to believe, and they can live the lives that they want to live. That's the great thing about being a libertarian. When you're a libertarian, you let people do the things that they want to do. You let people have their kooky, crazy beliefs. There's a libertarian politician up in Montana that believes colloidal silver is the best thing ever, and he has Argeria because of it. Google that. Makes your skin turn silver. He looks like a Smurf. So, yeah, Google silver skin condition. A colloidal silver skin. You'll see these guys that have the grayish skin from silver deposits. Still takes silver. Says, well, I may have gray skin, but I've never been sick because of it. Does it really harm us for letting people do that and believe that? No, that's what makes life fun. The silver guy died? Aw. I hadn't really followed Silverman for a while. Topic change. Very random question. What is your opinion on motorcycles? Are they dangerous? And for a first vehicle, would a motorcycle be more ideal? Yeah, I used to have a Ducati SR2 Monster. They're remarkably dangerous things. And I would highly recommend against people using motorcycles. But it's important to point out in the developing world, mopeds and motorcycles, dirt bikes are usually the dominant form of transport because they're so cheap to fuel, maintain, and fix. You'll see lots of Vespas or their equivalents floating around. The problem is that you, you have no protection from a crash. You get when you fly off. You can do all kinds of crazy maneuvers and things like drive between lanes and things like that. So you never really get stuck in traffic jam, but really dangerous to do that. And other drivers, especially larger drivers, they miss motorcyclists all the time. So I would not recommend it for your first vehicle. And also, if you're really going to drive it, you really have to understand how to do that and the places and conditions where that's safe versus not safe. So, from a safety perspective, terrible. Although being 20 years old on a motorcycle is a pretty fucking awesome experience. I'm not gonna lie. You do lots of crazy shit once you know what you can do with it. Oh yeah. You do know that red meats induce gout attacks. No, I've never heard that. That and shellfish. Never heard about purines at all. My coworker got diagnosed with gout like a year ago, and after he changed his diet, greatly reduced. Doesn't make you miss the steak, just reduce it. Yeah, and actually managing gout with diet is the single best thing you can do. I agree with you, and I'm working on it, like the listening skills. Ever been to Louisiana? Actually, I have been. I've been to Mo, Louisiana, and Orleans, all those other places, and I have a very good story about the devil's penis. If you find it in my AMAs, you can listen to it. I won't tell it again here because it takes a little while, but I have a great Louisiana station story about that, and that was a lot of fun. Charles, what do you think about fireworks? Use them every year. I spent a lot on fireworks too. This is America. You celebrate your country's independence by blowing up a small piece of it. Why don't you live in Hawaii? I ask myself that every day. I love Hawaii. I grew up on Maui, and one of these days I'll get a place there and co-locate. But right now I'm going between Wyoming and Colorado. Charles, I want to start a farm. What should be the first steps? Well, there's a lot of micro agriculture videos on YouTube that I'd highly recommend. The smallholder farmer videos. And Cornell has a really cool program that's fairly inexpensive that actually tells you how to run a small scale farm. And just taking those courses, you'll learn enormous amounts about soil science and irrigating principles and how to build hydroponic farms versus open farms and so forth. But there are a lot of people that are making good money off of 4 or 5 acres of farming. So it's really just a question of do you have the time to invest? It takes about 3 to 6 months to learn enough to get started, and then probably a few years to get to a point where you're dangerous. Any updates on the aquaponics front? When we have a little bit more time next year, going to definitely build an aquaponics facility up in Wyoming. Charles, have you ever had a run in with wild bison? All of my bison on my ranch are wild. They're not domesticated bison. So every time I see them, it's a run in with them, right? Ha! Are you familiar with Garrett's Lee E8 theory for Lie algebras in the quantum gravity model? Yeah, I've seen that, and they have this beautiful little picture, and he's like a physicist and a surfer. It's really cool for dinner party conversations. Charles, tell us now, are you Satoshi? We all are Satoshi, and no one's Satoshi. Satoshi's dead, and no, I'm not. Another thing about common sense, like I am 33, guys. Like Bitcoin was created 2007, 2008. It's like 1920 making Bitcoin. Fucking come on. Yeah, these people. You get asked again and again and again, and at some point you're like, sure, if you want to believe that, go ahead. Favorite song from Pink Floyd? Wish You Were Here. I think Adam Back is Satoshi. He's the most likely candidate. But that's the Occam's razor candidate. There could be other people, and probably will eventually come out, and maybe we'll all be surprised. Who knows? How's the JavaScript course coming around? Oh, that's actually a fun question. So right now I'm reviewing a lot of different literature, and I've been thinking deeply about what's the best way of explaining computer science to the extent you can become a proficient developer that kind of understands the underlying infrastructure. So the idea was that you'd start with like a NAND to Tetris foundational thing where you'd really talk about how computers work under the hood, and then you work your way up to a theory of computing and also information theory. So you kind of understand the limitations of information and also what computers can and can't do at their core. And then you say, okay, here's JavaScript as a candidate language, and let's learn JavaScript correctly. So JavaScript with a functional paradigm, kind of like Ramda, and these things, and learn about all the different things, and then have some modules, like for example, do a deep fake, something like, so that's an AI module. That'd be a lot of fun. Build a web scraper. So it teaches you a lot about how networks work and how to interface with a browser and search the web and so forth. And then maybe a data science problem or something like that, or connect it to the web scraper where you collect lots of information and you analyze it. So you can show how data science really works. And then maybe do something in crypto and put all those together. That would be a lot of fun. And I think you could learn an enormous amount from that process. The problem is writing a course of that nature takes an enormous amount of time. And I'm just not in a position where I can commit that time. So I thought a lot about it, and I wrote a lot of notes down on how to do a course like that. But I haven't professionally pursued it yet. If I ever did, it'd be free, like everything we release, and it'd probably be Udemy and YouTube lectures, depending on where the Udemy platform is right now. But it'll be YouTube lectures like the Plutus Pioneers program. It'd be fun to do something in formal methods with JavaScript as well. What's the date for smart contracts? It is September 12th. Do. Charles, how do you calculate the maximum supply of Cardano? It's fixed in the protocol itself. It's a hard lock parameter. What turned you on to numerology? Well, numbers, obviously. They're very sexy. Oh, man. 5. Bare naked 5. There's no other way. Charles, have you read Atlas Shrugged? Yeah, I've read the Philosopher in Hell edition. So if for every page you analyze, 2 more pages are written by Ayn Rand. Best money you've ever spent. It's kind of funny. You remember the small things in life. I'd been working and I was extremely tired and very hungry and very poor. This was many years ago. And I dropped by 7-Eleven on the way home and I only had $1.30 in my pocket. I said, shit, what can I get for $1.30? I was really hungry and really tired. So I walk over to the aisles and I see this ramen noodle cup, the shrimp ramen noodle. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I bought it and I made it right there at the 7-Eleven, kind of peeled back the top a little bit, poured the hot water in there. And it was late at night. So I put the little noodle cup right there next to the coffee machines. And I walked over, started talking to the gas station attendant. We had this nice 10-minute conversation. I walked over, my noodles were ready. I stirred them up, put a little of the spicy stuff in it because they had that for free. And I take that first bite and I was like, so good. So good. Little shit like that. That's the stuff you remember. And that's the good money. It was $1.07 for that cup noodle. Pretty good deal. Had just enough left over to get some air in my tires. Don't you have a Huracan? I do. A Huracan Evo. It's an amazing car. Golf. Fuck that. Let's talk the yacht I'm going to buy with them, Ada. Well, good luck with that. I'm not a yacht guy. Yeah, just because my dad was a doctor didn't mean my dad gave me much. He was one of those you have to earn it type of guys. And he was an internist. The hierarchy of doctors. You have your cardiologists and your ophthalmologists and the dermatologists. And they make all the money, and the primary care physicians do all the work and get all the shit. They don't make the money. Just watch you on Crypto Banter. Yeah, we were talking about NFTs apparently. That was a interesting episode. How is Yella virtual machine coming along? Actually, we're about ready for a major new development push. So they're working on it every day, and we're going to build a nice development ecosystem around it and start really focusing on production, performance, and tooling. But it's one of my favorite projects. And the way that we design Mantis, it's got pluggability. So you can put the KVM in, you can put Yella in. So I think we get 2 side chains for free with the same code base. Charles, are you into classical music? Yeah, I used to play piano. And who's your favorite composer? Composer for piano was Chopin. Composer for symphonies is Beethoven. What is the lobster doing on your microphone? Well, we're trying to name the son of a bitch. I think we're going to call him Mike. Mike the lobster. A few of you guys have asked me. There's so many Mikes in my life, and Mike is on the mic. Mike. Why the name Cardano? It's after Girolamo Cardano, the famous mathematician. Google him. He was a super interesting guy. Would you rather fly or teleport? Fly. Do you have a pet? Many. What's your driving motivational factor? Well, before I became the parent of Mike the lobster, it was other things, but now it's to make sure that Mike is okay. Have you ever tried listening to psych trance? Yeah, they got Psychedelic space rock. They got synthwave, and now there's psych trance. Yeah, I'll give it a try. These are the questions that tries a man's soul. And you people who think I'm arrogant, you're going to grab that. You're going to take it. You're going to take it. Oh, shit. Favorite game, tied between Baldur's Gate series and Arcanum. Okay, do you remember the moment when you discovered cryptography/blockchain? Okay, first off, never do that again. Don't make cryptography and blockchain one and the same. They're not. They're very different. I took an intro to cryptography class many years ago from Professor E at CU, and I was like first time I've really been exposed to cryptography. A long time ago, and we did public key crypto and RSA and discrete logarithm problem and all these other things. Crypto's been around for a very long time. Blockchain is new. They're not the same. They're very different. Okay. Blockchain is a composition of things. It's a consumer of authenticated data structures and consensus algorithms and cryptography. It's a consumer of network protocols, all kinds of stuff. Crypto is all about the science of secure communication. And there you think about confidentiality, message integrity, non-repudiation, authentication, the proof of knowledge. And you're always basing these things against the capabilities of an adversary. And you're trying to build models of provable security bounded against an adversary. That's ubiquitously useful to many domains that have nothing to do with blockchain. Now, where I first heard of blockchain was through Bitcoin, and that was back in 2011. And I don't actually remember the exact time period, but I remember it was connected to Slashdot or something. I saw a thing come up, and I said, "Oh, that's looking interesting." And I read the white paper, and I thought about it, and I said, "Well, this is fun." And I set up a miner, and I started mining. I started buying some of them. I started doing stuff for them, and I accumulated quite a few Bitcoin. But then I gave away and sold or used them. Like for example, I used to buy stuff on Bitmint, like many people did. I have an Xbox that now costs millions of dollars because of that. But I didn't understand at the time the profound implications of Bitcoin or where this technology could go. It took a few years for that to really set in. All right, we'll clip it here. And what we always do when we clip these things is we give away some money. So let's do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and share the screen. Screen share. Wow, there we go. All right, let's go to Kiva and let's go ahead and find someone to lend to. So for those of you, find a borrower. For those of you who don't know, Kiva is a microfinance website, and they allow you to give small scale loans to people all around the world, and they have different regions: North America, Central America, South America, Africa, Eastern Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Oceania. Anyway, these are small loans, usually only a few $100s, and they try to make the interest rates as small as possible. This is one of my areas of huge passion. We're starting to do some experiments in Kenya where we're doing this in a peer-to-peer capacity. And now that smart contracts are coming in 2022, we can actually build out a microfinance center for Cardano. But in the interim, we use Kiva to kind of demonstrate the concept. So where should we go today? Let's look at Eastern Europe. How about that? Oh, find a borrower. There's Albania, Armenia, Georgia, Kosovo, Moldova. Let's look at Albania. How about that? Okay. She looks interesting. Okay, let's read her story. All right. Razmije is a 59-year-old lady from Korka City. She has one son and recently moved in another house, and she is living on her own as unfortunately her husband passed away a month ago. She's had Kiva Lender support in January 2020, and her aim was to open a small tailoring shop, and she's been working in a tailoring factory for more than 10 years. But unfortunately, her husband got sick and all the money received went to his medical expenses. She's had some health problems, and due to the problems she's been having in the last months, her situation got worse. In order to recover, she needs to do some medical examination for herself in the capital city. Razmija is asking one more time for Kiva lenders to support and pay for her medical expenses. Okay, so let's give the full amount. Okay, I need to sign in, I guess. All right, 1 second. Let me stop sharing. Sign in. Do. There we go. Okay. Continue to check out. And we're going to do PayPal. Okay. Okay, just a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and share the screen again. Share screen. 1 second, just got to do that. Wow, there we go. Okay, so thank you for supporting. And we'll go back to our portfolio and take a look at all the microfinance that we have. 5,500 total deposits. So we have some from Palestine, Albania, El Salvador, Haiti, Cambodia, Senegal, Togo, the Philippines, Mexico, Peru, and Kenya. And they're all doing pretty good. So always remember to give. Always remember that this technology is built for not just us, but others. And until next time, thank you all for being part of the community. This was a lot of fun as an AMA. Talk to you guys soon. Cheers.